All right, guys. So we're going to finish up, like I said, the performance assessment stuff today. We're going to be looking at strength assessments, like 1 rep max strength assessments. And then we'll briefly kind of set the stage for when we revisit assessments in our in our sports performance class. It'll be our final class before winter break is the program designed for athletes. We will review fitness assessments in that class with like some of the agility stuff and the high jump, vertical jump assessments, long jump assessments, things like that. We'll kind of set the stage a little bit and talk about what those look like today. And then we're going to dive into those example programs and stuff. So, in your textbook, the only 2 strength assessments you're going to see are the bench press and the barbell squat. That being said, though, you can do 1 rep max testing and pretty much any of the major barbell lifts out there. Like if you wanted to do a 1 rep max assessment for a deadlift, you can still follow these same protocols. And if you did it for a military press or a bent over row, same protocols. They just give you just 1 in the upper body and then 1 in the lower body. So just trying to keep it really simple. And this is where like you can even see that in the book they were just trying to save some space. Clearly, they don't even necessarily call it the bench. I mean, they call it the bench press strength assessment here in the PowerPoint slide, but in your textbook they will call it the upper extremity strength assessment. And so it's meant to be a placeholder for the bench press or the military press or, you know, the bent over row. And the protocols are actually really, really similar for both of those. But we're going to look at NASM's way of doing it. And then I'm going to show you guys a video that's going to sort of do it a little bit of a different way to take a look at that. But then we'll also talk about like how to kind of convert those numbers. So pretty straightforward for the strength assessments. You know, they are assessments that are designed to assess either upper body or lower body strength in order to help us determine what poundage to give our clients, right? So we are trying to determine specifically how much weight our client should lift, because we know that like certain 1 rep max percentages correspond with different energy systems inside the body. So if we look at like 1 rep max percentages. Actually, there we go. Boop. So if you look, this is not NASM's take on this, but these are sort of the general rules here. If you're going for strength, you want to lift basically at loads greater than 85% of your 1 rep max. If you're going for hypertrophy and muscle growth, you want to be somewhere between 65 and 85%. A lot of people will say 70 to 85%. NASM says 70 to 85%. Actually, they don't actually use these numbers here. So they'll say 70 to 85% for hypertrophy. And then if you're going for endurance, you're going to want to be anywhere below 70%. And so like, that's sort of an approach that we're looking at, you know, for using these numbers in a very specific range. There we go. That's let's see here. NAS 1 rep max. You know, I don't know why I'm pulling this up. I literally have this all on one giant chart. So, you know, so Joseph and Chris and Edwin, this will be your first time kind of seeing this, but this is sort of all of the sets, reps, tempo, intensity rules that are in your textbook, right? So this first column here, the blue section, that is the stabilization level, right? So these are clients that are in our beginning, beginning stages of training. And then we got clients who are in the strength level, and you can see we've got a lot of different rules within strength because we can gain strength in a variety of ways. And then we got the power level here in yellow. And so, stabilization level is really all about like learning how to recruit your muscles and just moving properly. And we call it the stabilization endurance phase within it, right? So the stabilization endurance phase means that we really are trying to work on our endurance, which means we need to do a relatively high number of reps which is why the rep range you'll see is listed as 12 to 20 repetitions. That corresponds with about 50 to 70% of your 1 rep max. So if I were doing 20 reps, I would want to do about 50% of my 1 rep max. If I were doing 12 reps, I'd want to do about 70% of my 1 rep max. And so like that is sort of the rep range that we're looking at. This is why it's important to kind of calculate things out. If my goal was to gain like a little bit more strength, I might be somewhere closer to like 70 or 80%. If I was trying to gain like muscular size, I'd go anywhere from about 75 to 85. And if I'm going for maximum muscular strength, anywhere from 85 to 100. And then if I'm going for power, I'm actually going to keep it down as low as like 30 to 45%, but I'm going to move at super, super, super fast velocities, you know? So that kind of, that we'll go over those rules, obviously much more in depth when we actually get to our program design class. It's basically the whole concept of program design is getting those numbers memorized. But when it comes to like looking at this, you know, reason that we're doing performance assessments, it is so that we can, you know, figure out like our clients' like starting range. Bench press and military press, you know, I generally find that you want to do this on your barbell movements, right? Your big 5, right? The barbell squat, the deadlift, the bent over row, the bench press, and the military press. Those are the big 5 that I think you should track 1 rep maxing in personally, just because those are sort of going to cover the main key areas of the body. You could also do like, you know, a 1 rep max test, you know, on other exercises. What you could do an incline chest, you know, bench press or something like that. I don't recommend doing 1 rep max testing on like dumbbell training personally, although you can. Instead, what I prefer to do like is to use the conversion charts. So here's the thing about 1 rep max conversion charts. So if I open this up here, that's a PDF. I do not want to open that one. So this is the table that's in your textbook, right? So when you're looking at your 1 rep max conversion, let's say that you did this many pounds. Like if you did 100 pounds for 1 rep, then that means that, oh, I'm sorry, other way around. Sorry. If you did, I looked at the chart backwards. If you did 133 pounds for 10 reps, right? That means that, actually, no, I didn't look at this wrong. Good Lord. Sorry. Blah. If you did 100 pounds for 10 repetitions, right? So 100 pounds for 10 repetitions, then your 1 rep max is 133 pounds, okay? If you did 100 pounds for 9 repetitions, then your 1 rep max is around 129 pounds. If you did 100 pounds for 8 repetitions, it's around 125. So that's how we use this chart here, right? And you can see if you did 95 pounds for 2 reps, that means your 1 rep max is right around 100. So you can see this moves pretty close to like by 5 every time, although it gets just a little bit off. Like it's like 5 and then it goes up by 6 and then it goes up by like another 5 and then it goes up, you know. So there's some fancy math sort of going on in the background here to kind of show you what these numbers are. And so that way, like if you have a client, you know, and you want to know, like I wouldn't recommend doing like bicep curls for, you know, your 1 rep max. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a silly exercise. Doing single joint exercise just doesn't make a lot of sense when it comes to 1 rep max training. But let's say you're training your client and you've been working within like a specific rep range of, let's say, you know, 8 to 10 repetitions for the last couple of weeks. And you want to take them into a little bit of lower rep training. You want to go for like 6 to 8 reps, right? So it's like, hey, we've been doing this. You were doing 30-pound dumbbells for, you know, 10 repetitions. Let's see if we, you know, I want to get you closer to 6 repetitions. How much weight do I need to lift? So I look over here on my chart and it's like we were doing 30-pound dumbbells and we did it for 10 reps, which means that like, you know, we should be able to do for 6 reps here, about like 35 pounds, right? So that's going to be, it's like, okay, so we're going to raise those dumbbells up in a little bit of weight, and that's going to give us, you know, the appropriate range there. So that chart is great, guys. It's very, very handy, but we live in a modern world. We all have phones that are very, very smart. And so it's a lot easier to go like 1 rep max conversion calculator. Download a 1 rep max chart. I keep one on my phone that's really simple and very, very easy to use. So you can see here, it's right on my first page actually. And I'll just click like 1 rep max. And so I'll be like weight lifted, let's say 30 pounds. And I did 10 reps, right? So I did, so I don't know if you guys can see that. Let's say 30 pounds for 10 reps. Well, if I wanted to do 6 reps, I would look down here and my 6 rep max is right around 33, because this calculator gets very specific about it. So we would round that to about 35 pounds, and that should be about the right amount of weight for that client who's doing 6 repetitions. And you can see that's the difference between, you know, 30 pounds at our 10 rep max, which was, you know, about like, you know, 60 to, yeah, about 60% of 1 rep max, over to the other version, which would be about 85% of 1 rep max. So that's sort of what we're going for on the 1 rep max charts. And it's really, really handy. I recommend every one of you guys get one of those conversion charts on your phone there, because you also really want to use 1 rep max testing as a way of, you know, you want to work at and warm up. You want to do like specific warm up sets of like your exercises, right? So, you know, let's again say here, like if I did 100 pounds and I did that for, you know, 1 rep, and I hit calculate here, and it's like, if I want to work at 70% of my 1 rep max, that's going to be about 70 pounds. If I want to work at 65, it's going to be 65 pounds. If my 1 rep max was 135, right? Well, then 95% of that's 128, 85% that's 115. So these are all the kind of numbers. So if I had a client who, let's say they, you know, let's say it's like a high schooler, they're trying to get to that first milestone of like 2 plates on the bar, you know, they're really trying to like do that. And we test their 1 rep max, and it's like, look, you finally pulled it off, right? We get that whole 135 pounds. They rack it. They're super stoked. And then like our training for that is going to be somewhere between like 1 to 5 repetitions. Maybe they do like 3 sets of 5 repetitions or something. You know, well then I would want them to do about 85% of their 1 rep max so they can get all 5 repetitions. That's going to correspond to 115 pounds for that client now. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Cool. So it's a really handy tool to have. Like I said, use the calculator. You don't actually have to use the 1 rep max conversion chart. We'll use it just so you guys know how to reference it once, and you can kind of see where it comes from. It helps the concept kind of stick a little bit better. But honestly, just keep a calculator on your phone. The other nice thing is you'll also want to look at a warm-up protocol. There's a lot of different ones out there, and NASM doesn't actually have a hard stance on this. But when you're doing your warm-up, you know, sets, right? If you're like, actually, hold on, warm-up. What we call percentages. There we go. So you might end up doing like, you know, 4 or 5 sets of warming up, and, you know, you're working your way up to like this really like heavy weight. You might start with just 45 to 50% of your 1 rep max for maybe 8 to 10 reps, drop it down to like 65% for 3 to 4 reps, drop the reps down to 2 for 80%, and then like 90 to 95% of your 1 rep max. And then you're into your working sets, you know. That's a very common method, but that obviously doesn't take into account the fact that like, well, what if I'm, you know, really keeping it like below 5 repetitions there, you know? And so like there's a couple different calculators out there, but you can see here, Oh, that's not a calculator. Warm-up sets calculator. Warmreps.com. I actually have never used this. Actually, have not used this website before. But if we go like, you know, on the squat there, no. Oh yeah. So let's say my 1 rep max on the squat is 250 pounds, right? So I hit calculate there, and you'll notice I should be doing 2 sets of 45, with just 2 sets with just the bar. 1 set of 5 repetitions at 100 pounds, 1 set of 3 repetitions at 150 pounds, 1 set of 2 repetitions at 200 pounds. And then I'm going to go into my 3 sets of 5, for my working sets. So this calculator kind of did all the work for me. If my 1 rep max was, if I was super strong and I could lift 600 freaking pounds, it's like, hey, start with the bar for, 2 sets of just 5 repetitions, kind of greasing the hinge. And then you're going to do 1. Oh, it didn't recalculate, actually. Sorry. There we go. There it is. They're recalculated. So 2 sets of 5 on the 45-pound bar, and then I'll do like 1 set of 5 with 240 pounds as a warm-up. That's crazy to me. That's someone's warm-up. That's like getting into like the top ranges of my warm-ups. 1 set of 3 for 360 pounds. So you're really adding some freaking weight there. 1 set of 2 for 480, and then you get into your working sets. And that's working at specific percentages in the background that I'm actually not 100% familiar with. I don't know what numbers they're using. I guess they're going like 240 divided by what's 240 divided by 600. So they're going at 40% of their 1 rep max for 5, and then 360 divided by 600, that should be 60%. Yeah. So they're going like 40%, 60%. I believe this next one should be about 80%. Yeah. So they're going like 40, 60, and 80%. It's a good protocol. I don't hate that. Me personally, I keep one. I used it this morning during my training session with my roommate. And I just have this one on my phone that's called warm up lifts. And you punch in your weight. So if I said 600 and I am doing 5 reps today, I would hit calculate. And so it would go, this one does a little bit of a different protocol. It's like first set is 204, second set's 204, 300, 402, 500, and then you're up to 600. So everybody's gonna have a little bit of a different warm-up protocol depending on who you ask. I personally like that one, and I just skip to the 3rd warm-up set. I like to do like 3 to 4 warm-up sets when I'm lifting. But knowing your specific percentages can help you calculate that out manually if you ever want to come up with your own warm-up protocol that you don't necessarily want to just like use a calculator for. So because of that, we need to know our 1 rep maxes. And that's what we're looking at today. Same thing is true, by the way. Remember how we talked about using our heart rate max, right? We want to figure out what the carven-in heart rate max for our client is, so that we can work at specific percentages. If I go too hard and my heart rate gets too high too quickly, I'm not gonna be able to do endurance training. I'm only gonna be doing sprinting training. If I go too easy, then I'm not, I'm not growing and getting better at cardio. Bench press assessment. First one we're looking at here. So this is the upper extremity strength. So this is designed to assess your 1 rep max for intensity purposes of upper body exercises. It is an advanced assessment. It's not necessarily, appropriate for everybody, but with the bench press version, get them lying on their back, toes pointed straight forward, and their low back in a neutral position. I know that it's been getting popular in the last few years to have this like back arch, have this like major back arch, during like bench pressing. That is not what we are going for here. I have nothing wrong with somebody who's like squeezing their glutes and getting a little bit of like spinal stability in there. But the reason people are doing this is because like it allows them to recruit the lower portions of their pec. And then also it allows them to not have to lower the bar quite as far. So it is making the exercise easier. Good Lord. Not a big fan of that personally. Then again, I'm also not as strong as most of the people in these pictures. So I don't know, maybe it is better, but to me, biomechanically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because you end up recruiting like, I don't know if I should say the wrong parts of your chest, but you're bringing in other parts of your chest to sort of make up for that deficit. So we're going to say low back in a neutral position. We're going to do it like this. Instruct your clients to like squeeze your glutes and then always warm them up with like a light weight for about 8 to 10 repetitions and then give yourself like 1 minute of rest. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add 10 to 20 pounds and perform 3 to 5 reps, rest about 2 minutes, and then you're just going to repeat that process until your client cannot complete 1 repetition. So you add 10 to 20 pounds. So let's say we start with, a light weight for our client. And so we ask them, it's like, hey, have you ever bench pressed before? And they're like, no, I'm brand new to it. Never done this before. We start them with like a 45-pound bar, just basic raw bar, right? And they're like, okay. And so then they do 8 to 10 of those. They rack it. We give them 60 seconds of rest. And then we're going to add, 10 to 20 pounds there. And so that 10 to 20 pounds, hold on one second. That's kind of funny. It actually says 30 to 40 pounds here in the assessment. That's a typo. That's a typo on the PowerPoint. 30 to 40 is the protocol for lower body. That's what we're going to look at in a second. Okay, anyway, add 10 to 20 pounds. That's about increasing by about, 5 to 10%. And then perform like 3 to 5 more repetitions. So if it was just the bar, we'd add 10 pounds to that and then it'd be 55. And they're like, yeah, that's a piece of cake, right? And so do 3 to 5 and then we rack it, add another 10, right? And eventually, like we work our way up until they, are really feeling it. Maybe we add 20 pounds. It's like, yeah, that's way too easy, right? And it's okay, great. So we go up by 20 pounds, a little 10-pound plate. So 45 into 65 into 85. And then they're like, okay, like this is starting to feel a little bit tougher, 95. And they're like, all right, like now they're doing like, the 3 to 5 repetitions are starting to feel tough. And then what you're going to do is you can say, okay, well now we're going to get a little bit heavier here. And then we start to finally like get to a place where they're tapping out. Now, you don't have to start every client with the bar, guys. That's a very common misconception. If you've got like Eddie Hall, freaking strongest man in the world, coming into the gym, you're not going to 1 rep max test him by starting him on just the bar. You're going to be like, hey, what's a light weight that you could probably do, for 8 to 10 repetitions. And if it was Eddie freaking Hall, he'd probably be like, I don't know, 200-300 pounds. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's crazy. So, he comes in and does like a little bit of a lighter weight, warms up, and then we're going to add 5 to 10% of that. That's 10 to 20 pounds for most people. If you do start to get into like these really, really high numbers, it might start being closer to like 15 to 25 pounds. Maybe even 20 to 30. But like, it's 5 to 10% of the initial load. And then you're going to give them about 2 minutes of rest in between each round and repeat until basically they hit that like 1 rep, and you have to kind of bail them out. So that is sort of the protocol for the bench press assessment. 2 minutes between. You can see this takes a very long time. A lot of times like strength assessment days kind of end up being their own workout in a lot of ways. One of the things that I like to do actually is I like a 5-3-1 routine. 5-3-1 routine means you do 5 reps for the first set, and then you add some weight, 3 reps for the second set, add some weight, and then you do your 1 rep max. And I will do 1 rep, and then I will rack it, add a little bit of weight, see if I can do another one after, like on another set after a little bit of rest. So I'll just do as many sets as I can, and then that will help me determine my new 1 rep max. and I'm working it into my workouts. You know, I'm working it into like my weekly routine or monthly routine. I would only do that like once a month at the end of like a peaking program, just before I do like a deload week. If that makes sense to you guys. Any questions on how to do that or what this is used for? How you guys feeling about 1 rep max testing?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I need to trap myself. I don't really go for those, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. You're a big calisthenics guy, you know.
I do a lot of hypertrophy, that's why.
And yes, and if you're doing a lot of
Yeah.
bodybuilding, yeah, it's really built around. That's the thing. If you're bodybuilding, you're in a range of like 6 to 12. So you're getting kind of far away from like maximum lifting. So with that, it's like, if I'm doing 6 to 12, I will say the calculators are not perfect, guys. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, okay, I should be able to lift this much weight. I'm like, you know, for 6 reps. And I go out there and I'm like, 3, you know, like,
yeah. I should go by feel, you know?
Yeah, and you can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But it's always handy to like write your weights down and be like, and use a calculator to get you somewhat close, you know? I love to like use the calculator and say, okay, I'm at, you know, 10 reps for this much weight. I'm trying to do, you know, 8 reps. And so it's like, should I go up by 5 pounds or should I go up by 10 pounds? And it's like, oh, okay, it's 10 pounds because like that's a substantial difference. This one's up by 5 pounds. You know, so it's a very handy thing. And then it gets me really close. And then sometimes I'm like, you know what, I got 2 sets in, but I'm feeling really good. I'll add another 5 pounds onto it, you know, if I can. So just to kind of show you what I'm talking about here, 1 rep max range wise, I'm going to make up kind of a fake, make up like a little chart here. So just to show you like one of the things I like on like a 5-3-1 program, right? So let's say, let's see here. We'll put in a table. This will be our exercise sets and reps, right? Oh, and then you know what? We'll say which week it is. So with week 1, let's flip these 2. Sorry, just trying to make this chart clear. So let's say it's the barbell squat, right? And it's week 1. So what I'll end up doing for that, one of my favorite 1 rep max, you know, or max strength protocols is in week 1, I will do like 3 sets of, let's say, 5 repetitions. And then I'm going to keep that same thing, but I'm going to go into week 2 and I'm going to go with 3 sets of 3 repetitions. And then week 3, 3 sets of, you know, or 3 sets where my reps are 5 for the first set, 3 for the second set, and then 1 for my final set. And that's a very, very simple sort of like, you know, protocol there. Then on week 4, which will be like the end of the month, I will do the 5-3-X protocol. So I'm going to do, you know, the same weights that I did last week, right? But then I'm going to do it for 5. I'm going to do it for 3 and do as many repetitions as I can on the last. And then use that calculator, be like, okay, well, I ended up getting 3 reps as well. You know, I did 3 reps similar to how I did in my last set on that final set with, you know, what used to be my 1 rep max strength last week. So clearly, like, I've gone up in weight. And so like, then I can kind of recycle this whole thing, you know, and do it on weeks 4, 5, 6, and 7, you know, 5, 6, 7, and 8 rather, and repeat the whole process, you know, but with new weights, right? So that is sort of an approach that I like. Alternatively, oh, and that's actually, sorry, that is if I did 3 sets here, right? Alternatively, the other approach that you can do is you can say you're going to do X number of sets and you're just going to commit as much time as it takes to get it done. And you're going to do 5-3/1/1/1, etc. Right? You're just going to do as many and keep going up with the weight every single time. And it might look like something like that, right? So you do your 1 rep max and you're like, I feel pretty good. And then you add 5 pounds to the bar and you still get it up off the ground. You're like, that was also really good. And then you do another 5 pounds to the bar and you still get it up off, right? And so that's like, oh, okay. And then you just do as many maximal sets as you can. This ends up being a super long session at the end of the month. And by the way, this is saying like week 5 right here. Probably wouldn't want to do that actually. You'd probably want to go into a deload. After a really intense routine like this one's like, I mean, that's freaking tough. That's a really hard routine. Super hard on the body. You're beating yourself up like crazy. You would probably want to have like a deload week where you do the same exercises that you've been doing. You just do them at a very low percentage of your 1 rep max. Take it kind of easy, or you reduce your sets, by half, maybe just like 1 set of 5 for all your movements that week. Something really gentle to kind of give your body a second and your nervous system time to kind of recover and come back around.
I've noticed something like, let's say like if I was stuck at a certain weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like I'll take a break, hit a plateau, and then I'm like, all right, well, this thing's not working out. So something that I've done, right? Like something that someone helped me out with, just switch your workouts around like every like couple weeks here and there. And then once I come back, I feel like like the whole nervous system for that lift, like just kind of reset it, like, you know what I mean? And then for whatever reason, I feel stronger when I come back in that lift.
Sure. I mean, that's a very common thing. Like I'll say like, if you hit like a plateau and you're really kind of getting stuck on your strength and stuff, it's not, you can't expect your weights to go up every workout.
Yeah, definitely not.
So you take a little bit of a deload week, and then because you took that time off, you might come back stronger, or maybe you took time off, you went through like a whole new cycle. You did like 30 days of like a very new style of lifting, For instance, I know bodybuilders who will do like mini cuts in the middle of like their, overall long cycle. And a mini cut will just be like 4 weeks where they reduce their calories. And then they do like cardio-based exercise, where they're doing like group exercise classes and Orange Theory stuff, things like that. They're just burning lots of calories. And then they come back to it and it's like, all right, you were away from the heavy lifting for a little bit and you did it for a full 30 days. So yeah, you're going to lose a little bit of strength, but then you catch up back to where you were very quickly. Maybe you need to do 2.
And then you start like hitting new numbers after that.
Exactly. So it ends up kind of looking something like this. It's like your strength's going up and then like, it's going to take a little bit of a dip, right? And then like your strength's going up and then maybe you plateau, right? And so then you take a little bit of a break and then you might even dip a little bit below that. But then again, it's going up like this, like if this were a stock, we're doing great. Invest in this, If that was your crypto investments right there, keep it up,
Yeah. And it's crazy because like even like I always like post like stories on my Instagram, like how progress is really made, and you know how you drew that chart right there.
Yeah.
So that's exactly how it is. Like people think it's just like a straight line. We're gonna shoot out, like just become the Incredible Hulk. No, that's just not how it works. So it's like that was a perfect example of what you just did there. Yeah. And last time I posted something like that, so
we call that undulating progress, where it's got waves, that's sort of what we are, purposefully aiming for. There's a really fun, if you guys want to watch a really fun video about that concept, and they'll call it like super compensation sometimes. Look up Jeff Nippard super compensation. This is a pretty advanced kind of concept, but it's a little 10-minute video. And it talks about how a lot of times some of our strength gains happen on our deload weeks because your body is like, and then finally you kind of calm down and it's like, get to work, your body, like, it's like, he's finally not tearing us down for the week, and then they fix everything and it makes it like way stronger. And then like, you come back and you're at a higher level.
Yeah.
That's kind of a fun one. So, So yeah, that's the sort of protocol there. The lower body strength assessment, same concept, right? It's your squat assessment. You can use this on the leg press as well, by the way. Although I hate the leg press personally. I'm team barbell squat, you know. But this is your 1 rep max for training intensity purposes. Also a very advanced assessment, not necessarily suitable for every client. Get the bar on their back, toes pointed straight ahead is what they say here. But here's what I will say. Do your normal barbell stance. It doesn't make any sense to do the strength assessment if, you know, in a way that you don't actually squat when you're doing a freaking barbell squat, you know? So it says put toes straight ahead. That could be fine, but we talked about it the other day, like finding your correct, you know, squat stance and squat width and things like that. You know, get everything in a neutral position, and then squat it down, and then you're going to add, you know, 20 to 40 pounds. So pick a light weight that they can do for like 8 to 10 repetitions. And then rather than going up by 10 to 20 pounds, which is 5 to 10%, you're going up by 20 to 40 pounds, which still will correspond with about 5 to 10%. So the percentage of the increase per set is the same on the bench press and the the barbell squat. But because we can lift so much more than, you know, in our squats than we can generally bench press, that 10 to 20 pounds tends to be more accurate. Or I'm sorry, 30 to 40 pounds tends to be more accurate. Although that's not true for every client, by the way. I mean, sometimes you'll have those people who they've been benching for years and they got these little stick legs and they're like, I can't squat. You know? And then, like I said, rest 2 minutes and then use your chart. And that's the exact same sort of protocol here. So I want to show you a little video. This is actually Lane Norton's. He was kind of like, you know, one of the kind of gurus, 1 rep max testing. So this is actually a video by bodybuilding.com. It's actually a really good video about how to test your 1 rep max. So he's going to kind of walk you through the process, a little bit different than some of Nassim's advice, you know, just slightly different here, but obviously the same principles apply. Wait for the ad to die. Oop, I forgot to share.
My name's Lane Norton. I have a BS in biochemistry and a PhD in nutritional sciences. I'm a competitive pro natural bodybuilder and powerlifter. In this video, I'm going to teach you about the 1 rep max, why it's important for you, why it's useful to know it, and how to actually test it. So what is the 1 rep max? Your 1 rep max is defined as the amount of weight that you can lift for 1 rep on any given lift. Many people think that the 1 rep max is only useful for powerlifters, and while it's much more important for them, it's still useful to know your ultimate strength as a bodybuilder from time to time. The 1 rep max is important to know because not only is it the ultimate measure of strength, but it can also help you properly build out your training block. For example, if I want to do hypertrophy specific work, staying at about 3 sets of 10 reps, I know that I should be training about 75% of my 1 rep max. This will allow me to complete the reps and sets and set up an appropriate amount of specific weight for that exercise. If I didn't know my 1 rep max, I might have to go by feel, and perhaps I set the weight too high and fail, or too low and it's too easy. By knowing your 1 rep max, you can objectively set up these training programs. Now technically you can test your 1 rep max on any movement, but I think it's most useful for compound movements. So now that you understand why it's useful to know your 1 rep max, we're going to talk about how to actually test for it based on your experience level. Here's the protocol I recommend for people who have less experience testing their 1 rep max. What I want you to do is use the bodybuilding.com 1 rep max calculator on this page. For whatever exercise you want to find out your 1 rep max, take a weight and a number of reps that you know you can do. Plug that into the calculator, and that will give you an estimated 1 rep max. It will also provide you with various percentages of that 1 rep max, so you can use it in the future to build out programs. Once you've entered that in, take 90% of that estimated 1 rep max, and we're going to use this to test. So I want you to go into the gym, do the warm-up that we're going to discuss later in this video, and then take 90% of that 1 rep max and do it for as many reps as you can. Now take that number of reps you get, go back to the bodybuilding.com calculator, and refigure your 1 rep max. Using the 90% for reps is going to give you a much more accurate representation of your estimated 1 rep max. So now I'm going to break down how to test for lifters who have more experience with a 1 rep max. Once your stretching and mobility work are done.
So really quickly, actually, the reason he said to do that version, right? So his version of this is like, you know, you're going to use that calculator. It's like if you did 100 pounds for 8 repetitions, right? Then your 1 rep max is probably, let's say, about 130, 140, right? And so like you would take 90% of that, let's say that's 120. And so you would put 120 on the bar and do as many reps as you can. If you get 7 of them, which by the way would be incredible, then like you would punch in like into the calculator, I did this many pounds for this many reps. The reason we do this, the reason this protocol exists, and it's a little bit gentler, it's a little bit different than the NASM one. It's faster than doing multiple sets the way NASM does. So it's a little bit handier, and we do like that. But it's also very safe because you're not pushing somebody who is not very advanced as hard as they can. If they're lifting closer to like 7 or 8 reps or something like that, that's a very safe amount of weight. You don't have to worry about them like tearing anything or, you know, injuring themselves. They're not working for maximal intensity.
For lifters who have more experience with a 1 rep max. Once your stretching and mobility work are done, I recommend warming up on a lift in the following way. To actually test, you're going to be doing 6 warm-up sets and then 3 attempts. On the first set, you're going to do 30% of your calculated 1 rep max for 8 reps. Then 40% for 6 reps, 50% for 4 reps, 60% for 2 reps, 70% for a single, and 80% for a single. Once you've done your 80% for a single, you're ready to begin your attempts. I recommend resting between each warm-up set as long as you need to be mentally and physically prepared for the next set. Now, if you're feeling stiff while warming up and think you need an extra warm-up set or 2, that's fine. But don't go overboard. You don't want to wear yourself out by the time you actually get to testing. On the flip side, you don't want to do too few warm-ups. If you do the appropriate amount of sets, it's not going to wear you out. It's just going to ready your body for your ultimate 1 rep max. For 1 rep max testing, I recommend your first attempt be approximately 90 to 94% of your current or estimated 1 rep max. If your last warm-up felt really easy, I would go to the higher side of that range. If your last warm-up felt heavier, then I would go to the lower side of that range. For your second attempt, I recommend anywhere from 96 to 100% of your current or estimated 1 rep max. If your first attempt felt really heavy, I would go more towards the lower end of that range. If it felt really light, I would go towards the higher end of that range. For your final attempt, I recommend 100 to 104% of your current or estimated 1 rep max. If your second attempt felt really heavy, go towards the lower end. If it felt really light, go towards the higher end. Because you're using as heavy a weight as possible, testing your 1 rep max can be dangerous, so I recommend using a good spotter. I also recommend using as good a form as you possibly can. If you squat high, you bounce the bar off your chest on bench press, or you hitch your deadlifts, you're going to get a higher number than you should. And thus, the weights are going to be too heavy when you go into your program, and you're going to miss weights, and it's not going to be effective. How often you retest is really going to depend on your goals. If you're a powerlifter and somebody who's strength specific, you're probably going to test it a little bit more often than you would if you're a bodybuilder. If you're a bodybuilder, maybe you're looking at every 3 to 6 to even 12 months because it's not specific to your goals. But it's useful to have to build out your training blocks. If you're looking to bring your training to the next level and utilize your 1 rep max, I recommend checking out my PH3 trainer here on bodybuilding.com. In 13 weeks, you'll increase strength and muscle mass significantly.
Yeah. He's got this. What's that?
Roids. Wait, what?
No, he's got this PHUL routine that he's real big on. So that is every assessment listed in your regular textbook. There is a little bit of the athletic stuff that we're going to cover in the sports class, like the left drill and like vertical jumping, long jumping, things like that. But that is the final bit of performance assessments, handy piece of information to have if you are training certain types of athletes who, their goal is definitely like increased strength. So a lot of assessments that you can do out there, guys. You don't have to do all of them, but you can do any of them, with your client. Just depends on like what their goals are. If I've got a client whose goal is weight loss, 1 rep max testing is probably not the most important thing in the world. They're probably going to do a lot of bodybuilding style training with like a lot more like cardiorespiratory endurance, which means I'll probably end up doing like circuit training. And those numbers are going to get all fluctuated during a circuit training. Like you might be able to do 200 pounds on a bench press when you're doing straight sets, but then like 185 pounds, if it's like, well, just before I did that bench press, I also had to do like a shoulder press. And just before that shoulder press, I had to do a bent over, like you're doing a circuit training style, you're not recovering as much. Those numbers are going to kind of shift, like for me, for instance, like I was doing 3 minutes of rest last month. This month I'm doing 2 minutes of rest. And so like, and then next month I'll be doing 1 minute of rest. And so like, because those times of rest are dropping, my weight's not exactly like fluctuating the same way. And that's because I'm like building towards a little bit more endurance style training. And that is it, guys. Other than obviously we got to build our programs today. Any questions on assessments? Anything like we're going to kind of, we're almost moving out of this a little bit. Obviously we're going to get to practice it tomorrow, but any questions or comments or concerns?
I got a question on the just building the workout. It's more for me, but I guess I could use later too. Like I had a shoulder surgery, and I'm already clear to work out, but I'm working upper body will be mostly endurance training to kind of get used to lifting again.
For sure.
But then do you have to do it like on your whole body? Like for example, upper body I do, high reps, and then I'm squatting lower reps. Does that affect like the nervous system at all? Or
good question. Not necessarily. Your body does. There's plenty to be said for the fact that your body does work synergistically. Like it is meant to sort of act as an overall like working unit together. But there's nothing wrong with like training for like heavy lifts on your lower body, because maybe you're still working towards that while you are coming back from an injury or obviously surgery. When you're coming back from something like that, you can do a lot of like higher repetition, lower intensity training. And yeah, that's a good way to kind of like keep yourself in the gym. You're still making overall gains. It's not going to affect your metabolism or have like a negative effect on your nervous system or anything like that. It just means that like you are going to get better at those two different things simultaneously, so it's like, it comes down to like how you speak about it. It's like, are you getting stronger? And it's like, well, I'm getting stronger in my lower body, but I'm getting more endurance in my upper body. It's like, all right, you can be that specific about saying it if you want, but I would just say yes, but yeah, you can definitely do that kind of thing, and that's totally fine. That's called a blended routine, by the way. It's where you're basically taking aspects of different styles of training. Edwin, you might be interested. I was kind of diving in deep into this like blood flow restriction training stuff lately. I was getting kind of curious about it. But they call it, it's blood flow restriction training is this kind of, it's been around for a while, but it's getting popular lately. And what it is it's where you'll actually use like a blood pressure cuff and a blood pressure like monitor to limit venous blood flow. So you allow arterial blood flow because you would never, ever, ever want to cut off the arteries because that will literally cause your freaking muscle to die permanently. But you want to limit venous blood flow so blood can't leave. So you allow blood in, but you do not let it leave. And so you get like a crazy, you can see here, you get like a crazy big, very vascular, very intense pump while lifting very light loads. I do not recommend doing this version, by the way. He's using like just regular old tourniquets. Don't do that. But crazy pump. So what it does is it causes like there to be a very low oxygen environment because there's so much like deoxygenated blood in the muscle, and it causes your metabolism to basically go into overdrive when it comes to muscle growth. And so it's been used to help people repair, and you lift at like 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max while still gaining strength. And so it's a really popular. It's getting more and more and more popular now that they're coming out with these like straps and bands and stuff. I am not a huge fan of the idea of like a band or a strap being used to apply this pressure, because like a band or a strap, you're going to base it like subjectively. They say it's a 7 out of 10 on tightness. Like if 10 is the super super tight, then you want to go about like a 7 out of 10. But it's like that's very subjective and difficult to measure. Generally, I recommend using an actual blood pressure cuff that has like an inflator, so you can actually measure it anywhere from 110 to 240 millimeters of pressure. And they're a little bit more expensive. You can see this one's $140, but as opposed to like 15. Yeah. But I think that is much, much smarter, personally.
Yeah, I have some floss bands laying around.
What's that?
I said I have some floss bands laying around.
Yeah, floss bands. Yeah, another popular thing. Yeah. Be cautious with those, though. Again, it's very subjective.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a fun thing. I was reading about that all day yesterday.
Yeah, I'll check it out. It looks interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm curious to see. I'm curious about it. I think I'll try it for 30 days and see how it goes. I love to put myself through little experiments. I like to be a guinea pig.
It's probably better recovery too, because all the blood flow going in.
That's what they say. Yeah, it's all about injuries.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about, like I said, we went through all the normal overhead squat stuff. Now I do want to kind of get into the corrective exercise overhead squat stuff. So this is bonus beyond what you'll find in the regular textbook. So we're going to look at some problems that we don't normally see. We're going to look at the foot flattening, heel rising situation that you'll sometimes see. And then we're going to look at low back or knees caving out, which is pretty rare, but sometimes we'll see that. And low back rounding, which is also not quite as common. So with a client whose feet is flattening, right? And if they have like a little bit of like a heel rise, what's happening there is they have really tight, calf muscles and really weak feet and foot and ankle complex muscles, right? So certain muscles are basically causing them to evert their foot. If we look at like what foot flattening is, aside from just external rotation, generally these kind of go together. But when you look at like foot flattening, right, you'll see basically somebody is putting all the weight of their foot on the inside. Like this is a normal foot posture where there's even distribution of weight here, here, and here. Here's too high of an arch. This is this is actually excessive inversion, right? Where basically their arch never even touches the ground. But then here's the excessive eversion, right? We can see that it's falling in this way. This version falls out that way, but this one falls inwards, right? So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this sort of flattened position there. That's not so bad. That's pretty good. Like you see a little gap in there, right? Rather than being like, totally fallen in the arches, something like this. Or wow, that's actually very intense. So we are trying to, get that arch nice and strong. So we got to look at what muscle causes eversion, right? So remember, inversion is if your feet are planted like this, the sole of your foot shows towards the midline. Eversion is where the sole of your foot goes towards the outside, right? So you can see here, here's our ankle inversion versus eversion, right? Right there, right? That's everting the ankle. Right there, that's inverting the ankle. So bottom of the foot towards the midline, in, outside foot, E. So again, we see way too much. Actually, there we go. Look at that. This runner here. You can see they're planting and they're everting really hard. The bottom of their foot's kind of, they're pronate, you know, they're doing way too much of this eversion stuff. So we call that foot pronation sometimes, because it's sort of a combination of things happening. Pronation is not, you know, eversion is just strictly frontal plane movement. We've also got dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. So if I go out and I also pull up like this, right? That, and then I also like externally rotate, right? We got external, internal. If I do all three of those things, dorsiflex, evert, and externally rotate, we call that overpronation. And that's what's happening here, right? So what muscles are causing that? The big muscle everters are going to be what is known as your peroneals. So your peroneals are these little tiny shin muscles. Oh, wow, that was very zoomed in. It's a group. Here's your Peroneus longus, your Peroneus brevis, and your Peroneus tertius. And what they do is they wrap around the side here. They go underneath the ankles. They go underneath the fibula there, and they grab your foot. So when they pulls, it causes your foot to swing out into eversion, right? And this picture is good, but it's actually not showing you. It also wraps over the top of the foot. There we go. So see this right here. This band runs across the top of the foot. So whenever it's pulling my ankle out this way. I'm everting, right? So we need to work on that. How are we going to stretch that? We're going to do inversion, right? And so we'll take a look at that. So we're going to SMR the peroneals. So when you're SMRing your peroneals, you're basically just going to place that foam roller right on the side of the shin. So we're getting into the side of it, like right there. Picking ourselves up and just kind of gently putting a little bit of pressure on the lateral side there. This is another one. Dion, we were talking about this a little bit, right? This is another one that would also be very, very helpful in that sort of foot and ankle routine. Adding this one in there will also kind of loosen up that complex and make it a lot more comfortable to squat down nice and low. But whenever we see that like sort of foot flattening action or external rotation action, peroneals are definitely going to be tight there. Then we need to still work on like our gastrocnemius and our soleus, right? Those tight calf muscles. And then we're going to work on the TFL here. Now, the TFL is obviously like a hip muscle, right? But again, like when we see that external tibial rotation, right, associated with like foot turn out, you can see these lists look very similar. Look at this, like foot turn out, soleus, right? That's the calf muscle that's deep. Lateral gastrocnemius, right? That's the calf muscle on the outside. Biceps femoris short head, that's a little hamstring muscle that's short in the back. And then TFL. Well, look down here at the foot flattening. We see the peroneals, the lateral gastrocnemius, the biceps femoris short head, and TFL. So I should actually add that on here. Right. So now, so that is going to, we're going to get into that biceps femoris, which is that external tibial rotator, and then that tensor fascial latae, which is an internal hip rotator. So most clients who have foot flattening will generally pronate at the knees as well. want to see a picture of somebody. There we go. So most people who do this flattening, that's intense on that side. You can see his knee obviously coming in adducted on both sides, right? So that short, tight hamstring muscle, that short, tight hip muscle, and then those tight peroneals, right? So we're going to follow that up with stretches for each. So we're going to do a static peroneal stretch. This is actually a very, very easy stretch to do just in the middle of the day. It literally involves going like this. So you are just going
sitting,
to sit,
place your foot,
and you're just going to pull your foot up like that. So she's doing inversion of the foot, right? She's also doing plantar flexion rather than dorsiflexion. So that's pretty good. The lazier version of this that I actually think still works pretty freaking well is, oh, come on, they're not doing it. Help me out, internet. Standing. There it is. So the other version of this that I really like is this version here. She's going in the front. I like to go behind. But basically, you just drop your leg back, top of your foot goes down, and you just sort of drag that foot along the ground there. And you'll feel a big stretch right there on the lateral side of your shin, getting into those peroneals as they're about to wrap over the top of your foot. But this is probably the most popular version of this. Doesn't have anything to do with the hip, by the way. She's just pulling up on the foot. That's the important part. So we follow that up, and now that's nice and loose. So hopefully our client can better externally rotate while they're squatting. We're also going to do that wall calf stretch because we're trying to get into that lateral gastrocnemius, right? So, you know, this version here. And again, because we're trying to get into the lateral side, I might even have my toe slightly pointed inward, just very, very gently. And then we're going to see that standing biceps femoris stretch. Remember, that's the hamstring muscle that does the internal rotation. So therefore, we are going to do external rotation by twisting the opposite way. So she's bringing this across this way, turning the foot inward, which is stretching out that tendon right back there. That is the worst stretch in the world. It feels terrible. And then a static standing TFL stretch, right? That one where we take the hip into hip extension, which is the opposite of a hip flexor. And then we, okay, that one instead. So hip extension and external hip rotation instead of internal hip rotation. So that's going to do a pretty good job of like stretching all of that out, right? That's going to turn off those muscles that are, you know, pushing our, like pulling our feet and pulling our knees inward. And then we need to strengthen all the opposite muscles. So we look at our list here, we're going to see our weak muscles, anterior and posterior tibialis muscles. So there are some specific strengthening exercises you can do, but they don't fit very well into our core balance reactive section, even though they are very terrific. So I want to show you a anterior tibialis exercise. So you're basically going to use a resistance band, tie it around your foot, and you're going to pull straight up like this. It's just pulling his toe back towards him because this muscle is a dorsiflexor, right? So he pulls his foot into dorsiflexion. The resistance band's pulling him back the other way. So that's a really good anterior tibialis exercise. Now your posterior tibialis does ankle inversion. So if we want to strengthen our posterior tibialis, we need to do that inversion. We need to pull into inversion. So we're going to do a little scoop with the muscle, and we're going to pull it from the outside. Waiting for this ad to be over. So now the resistance is going to go out to the side, and he's going to pull his foot like this. He's and pull it towards the inside. Again, this is very much associated with people whose feet externally rotate. So we are working on that foot internal rotation in order to fix it, right? Oh, we lost David. So pulling in like that. So there's a really good, but obviously that doesn't fit super well into this core balance reactive section. Honestly, if it were me, what I would actually do is I would remove this prone iso abs exercise right here, and I would do band resisted inversion and dorsiflexion. So then I would do maybe 3 sets of like 10 each, slow tempo. Let's say that's 0 seconds of rest. So 10 dorsiflexion plus 10 inversion for each foot. If it were me, that's actually what I do. But again, we run into this problem where like a lot of people want a lot of core extras, or might even just like, maybe I keep the core exercise and I replace my reactive exercise with something like this, you know? In fact, I probably wouldn't even be doing a reactive exercise. That's actually what makes the most sense. I would probably replace that explosive movement here with the anterior and posterior tibialis exercises. So it might look something more like that instead. But I wanted to keep this very textbook, 2 core movements, 1 balance, 1 reactive. So we're going to do the side iso abs with hip abduction, which is that side plank, right, where you are raising the opposite leg. So we're going here and lifting, right? And that's going to kind of work on those abductor muscles, which are on the outside, sort of opposite of my TFL there, right? So we're strengthening the gluteus medius with that exercise. I'm also going to probably just do a regular prone iso abs, get the abs activated. And then we like single leg hip rotations here as our balance exercise. We really like any balance exercise, if I'm being honest. But this one is a particularly good one because you can really focus on pulling your toe up while you are doing it. So she's going to stand on one leg, and then she's going to do an external rotation with the hip while she is trying to keep her hips squared towards the room. She's rotating right, this stays facing forward, but this sort of rotates out to the side. She's kind of moving her torso a little bit as well. I'd probably keep her torso like neutral. But she's going to externally rotate that out to the side there. Here's another example, right? That's pretty good. By the way, you can see here, look at from the side, look at how much dorsiflexion he's doing with his foot. That's why we really like this one. Rather than like a single leg balance with reach, which you're not going to have as much ability to kind of dorsiflex that angle. Just pull your toe towards your face. That's what I tell my clients. And then we did the box jump down to stabilization. You know, that is a good reactive exercise where we're working on that stability, right? So he jumps down, holds that landing for 3 to 5 seconds. So again, 2 core, 1 balance, 1 reactive. In this version, I'd probably do a little bit of a different activation circuit personally. It just depends on the client. That's where you really are getting into a lot of corrective exercise stuff, which doesn't feel as much like a traditional gym workout and feels a little bit more like a physical therapy session. Any questions on that one, guys? Questions, comments, concerns?
Good.
Cool, cool. All right. What about a client whose knees cave out? This is not quite as common, but occasionally. There you go. Occasionally it'll look something kind of like this. right? Big knees cave out action there. So this is the very rare circumstance where someone's got an overactive glute muscle, right? So with the knees caving out, we are going to see tightness in the gluteus minimus and medius. We are actually going to see tight glute muscles here. And then we're going to see a tight hip flexor muscle. That's your TFL. A tight biceps femoris, but not biceps femoris short head. It's the entire hamstring. So we're seeing a really tight hamstring muscle in the back, right? So gluteus medius, that's your side butt muscle right here, right? And then we see a tight piriformis, which is actually this muscle right here, the red one that's running this way from the sacrum to the femur. And then we're going to see a tight biceps femoris, and we're just going to see the entire hamstring on the lateral side, not just the short head, right? So that's all of that is causing the knees to sort of bow away, right? And so we need to kind of stretch those out by SMRing the piriformis. That's going to be one where you place the foam roller basically right onto your butt, getting into your sacrum there. This is the only deep muscle that we foam roll, actually, because technically it lives underneath. Well, not technically, it lives underneath your glute, so that makes it a deep muscle. Usually the muscles that we work on are on the surface. But there it is, right? He's pulling his leg up. He's exposing that piriformis. He's really kind of digging in. Again, this one also works really well with a lacrosse ball. Then we're going to SMR the hamstrings. So getting into there, again, I would probably do a pin and stretch if it were me, because I don't really like a foam roller on my hamstrings. I just find that the surface area is too big and I can't really get a good press. So I'd probably do that pin and stretch that we talked about with the lacrosse ball, where you're sitting and you extend the leg. And then the TFL, we already showed you that one. And then we're going to SMR the glutes. So I don't want to deactivate my maximum glutes. I don't want to deactivate my gluteus maximus. So I'm going to stay on the outside ridge here, right? Just like he's doing. That way, you can really ensure that you're not getting into the wrong side of your butt. You're not deactivating your butt. So then we're going to do a static piriformis stretch. You guys might have seen this one before. You might be familiar with this, but this is where you are going to pull up and across the body. There we go. So pulling up and across there, or you can do the advanced version. Not everybody's going to be able to handle this. We call this a figure 4 stretch. So up and across, or we can do it with like a full, oh, actually they're not doing the advanced version. So that's the piriformis there. And then also, like I said, the figure 4 stretch, this version here. So right foot rests on your left knee, hands go behind the back of the left knee, and you pull it straight back. And it will stretch that leg. Alternatively, you can also do like pigeon pose, which is also really good for your piriformis, where you take one leg and then you lay yourself down. But not everybody's able to do that. Can I see a frontal picture here, please? Actually, there's how to get into it. Right. There we go. There's a little bit of a frontal picture. So that's pigeon pose. That's a really good one for stretching out that piriformis. Love that stretch, by the way, guys. That's like one of my favorites. We're going to static 90-90 hamstring stretch. That's going to be good for the biceps femoris. So just stretching that leg straight up like so. A static TFL stretch, we already talked about that one. And then the hug the knee stretch can be really good here as well. Where you are literally pulling it up and across the body here. That can get into your medial glute. So this version works okay as well. I personally like the seated variation. I just find that gets a little bit better. Same thing with that one. But that's the hug the knee stretch. It's a gluteus medius stretch. That's sort of what it's called. So now I need to work on adduction. I actually need to strengthen my adductor muscles for the first freaking time, right? So the adductor complex is underactive. The inside hamstring is underactive, the medial glute. And then the gluteus maximus is not doing its work. So we're going to do a floor bridge with adduction, which is literally going to hit all three of those simultaneously. So I'm going to take a foam roller or a Dynadisc. Honestly, my favorite is like a physio ball. And I'm going to squeeze those knees together and I'm going to bridge straight up. Get version of this. All right, so he's squeezing the ball and he's bridging, right? Hip extension, hip adduction simultaneously, perfect for fixing a client who's like got that bow-legged posture. Then we're also going to do a ball bridge, which is a really good for like a hip thrust there. There's two versions of this. You can either do this version, which I really like. This is a little bit more hamstring focused. Just make sure our client doesn't cave their knees out, which they will totally want to on this exercise, which is why we like this version as well. Okay. There we go. So that's another really good. That's a little bit more glute focused. Like this is a little bit more hamstring focused. And then the other one's a little bit more glute focused. I like them both. I think both of them are great. We're going to go with the single leg throw and catch, which is a fun exercise where basically you just stand on one leg and toss that ball away. So it's a balance stabilization. The balanced leg has to stay put. And you got to work to kind of balance everything out. So your glutes and everything are going to get nice and activated just from simply isometrically contracting and stabilizing. We're going to make sure that our client doesn't sort of rotate that knee outwards while they're doing it. And then a squat jump to stabilization, which you guys are all really familiar with now for our exercise. And again, we're going to focus really clearly on not letting those knees cave out, right? So if I see my client do like a big bump, pull those knees in, like get them in alignment, right? So that is our knees caving out example. Last example that we've got here, we have got a, oh, hold on, this is all messed up. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, there we go. Does that all line up now? Okay. My LCD is going crazy. So what about clients who have the low back rounding, right? The butt tuck, the old man butt. Squatting like this. So this is the opposite. This is the opposite of a these are all like during deadlifts and stuff. Low back rounding, squat. This is the opposite of the anterior pelvic tilt, right? This is a posterior pelvic tilt. So now it's because the hamstrings are pulling down in the back. So what we're going to see with a low back rounding, tight muscle is literally just listed as the hamstrings. So it's biceps femoris, short head, long head, and your medial glute, your semimembranosus, and your all of them. All of the hamstrings are tight. And then we're even going to see the adductor magnus here, which is sometimes referred to as like the third hamstring muscle because it does tie to the back. It's an adductor muscle for sure, but it is in the back compartment of the thigh there, right? And so because of that, it causes a little bit of hip extension and it loves to draw the pelvis downwards. It loves to posteriorly rotate. And then we're actually going to go up above. We talked about lower cross syndrome being tight upper back, tight low back, and tight hip flexors, weak abdominals, weak glutes. Well, with a posterior pelvic tilt, It's happening in the front is being pulled upwards. Okay, so in this version, the abdominal muscles aren't weak, they're actually tight. So it is actually pulling up with the rectus abdominis and external oblique. So we're going to see tight abdominal muscles. Now, that doesn't mean they have a strong core. It just means they have a strong six-pack. That outer muscle that you can see is overactive. Doesn't mean that their overall like core stabilization is actually good here. So that's the low back rounding, the rectus abdominis and external oblique. So we need to loosen up the hamstrings. So we're going to SMR the hamstrings, probably do a pin and stretch. We're also going to work on those adductors. So we're going to place the foam roller on the adductors there. This version here, right? Getting into that inner thigh, mostly focused on the back portion of that inner thigh. So, you know, probably dropping the heel down a little bit more towards the ground so we can expose the sort of posterior aspect of that femur there. And then you'll notice I put an asterisk in here on the piriformis. NASM doesn't have a stance on that. They don't say that the piriformis is tight, but a lot of people out there do. That's one of those tight glute muscles that's basically pulling in. So I put an asterisk there because it's not in your official list, but in my opinion, it's definitely one of the tight muscles. So you'll notice I've actually got two hamstring muscles in here, a static 90-90 hamstring stretch, which is for the medial hamstring, and then a static biceps femoris stretch for the lateral hamstring. So we're working on both of those. Then we got a static adductor Magnus stretch. You might know this as a deep lunge stretch. You'll see people do this version here, where they'll do like a really, really deep lunge. There's also this version. So the reason we're doing this version as she kind of pulls away, I know it doesn't seem like an adduction motion, but she goes straight down and then she pulls away. She's abducting by stretching away from her thigh. And that adductor Magnus loves to do hip extension. So she's driving her foot up like this into hip flexion, which is why that deep lunge stretch also works really, really well. Because it's hip flexion, which is the opposite of that adductor Magnus. And then we're gonna do a static cobra stretch, really good for the abdominals, to kind of stretch that out. All right, I guess I'm just gonna look at the picture. So stretching out the abdominals right there. And then a static supine twist stretch, which again is for the external obliques. So that's this one right here. Throw it on the spin bike for 5 minutes, get the blood pumping. And then we need to strengthen all those low back muscles. So the anterior pelvic tilt muscles are weak on this client. So we are trying to strengthen the things that we are trying to loosen up with a low back arch situation. So we're going to strengthen the gluteus maximus and the erector spinae and the intrinsic core stabilizers. That's your transverse abdominis, your internal obliques, multifidus, pelvic floor muscles, and transversal spinals, which is really kind of part of the multifidus. So all the like stabilizer muscles, right? So we're going to do an isoprone cobra because that is really freaking good for the low back, right? That's a great way to kind of strengthen those low back muscles. Again, I could also do a Superman. Then we're going to do a quadruped opposite arm, opposite leg raise. That's a really good one, right? Where we're focused on doing that bird dog. She reaches out and she holds. She's doing this for reps, but you know, I'd probably do like a slow pause at the top. We went with single arm, single leg motion. This again is sort of like a standing bird dog. Kind of a silly name for it, but I honestly, well, in fact, with my clients, I call it a standing bird dog. But again, this is focusing a lot on, you know, kind of stabilizing that entire core, getting those transverse abdominis muscles and everything active. And then a box jump to stabilization is our classic sort of reactive exercise. So we pop, and then we hold it 3 to 5 seconds on the landing. And so that's a program that's going to kind of work. So now, guys, you actually have in your emails and available for download, you've got a very simple warm up, which will deactivate the muscles, and very simple movement prep, which will activate the muscles for basically all of the normal postural distortions. And then you can sort of pick and choose and piece them together as you need them. Any questions, guys? That's about all I got for you today. Any questions? Programs make sense and everything?
Yep.
Yeah, but tomorrow, we're supposed to bring all that stuff with us, right?
Yes. So tomorrow we are meeting up at Sochi, 9 a.m/6 p.m. It'll be our final day in this class. So Edwin, Joseph, and Chris, you guys will have made it through your first course at Sochi, which will be kind of exciting. And tomorrow, please bring, your tape measure if you've got it, body fat caliper if you've got it, and bring your textbook and a stopwatch if you've got it. And I just say bring your bag. At that point, it's a lot easier if you bring the whole bag.
Should we just bring all the accessories we got basically and just leave the books home?
Yeah, that's
except for the one book we need.
Except your main book.
Yeah, because then we're going to go inventory it too, right, to see what we're missing.
Yes, we do need to do that. No guarantees that they'll have it all tomorrow, but we'll put in an order if we don't, and then we'll get it to you hopefully soon. But yeah, that's about it, guys. Let me kill the recording here.